Hi, my name is Isabella Shields, and my group did monoculture. Monoculture does not only affect ecosystems, but it negatively impacts our health as well. This is due to the worsening quality of essential crops by using stronger weed killers because the soil becomes accustomed to them. This then leads to the runoff from the soil, which can contaminate human water sources and animal water sources, but in this case, it is known to cause cancer in certain areas. Monoculture explained. How monoculture happens. Monoculture is the process of growing the same type of crop over and over, which has led to an increased efficiency in plant harvestation. This form of plant farming is usually used in industrial farming. However, the long-term effects of monoculture are extremely harmful to the ecosystem surrounding it. It is harmful for these 4 reasons. It leads to soil degradation, buildup of diseases and pests, and over time, declining in productivity. It also goes against traditional farming, where different crops are planted to increase the quality of soil. To continue on this, I have a graph here which basically shows 2 different types of crops and 3 different ways of planting them. It shows the lack and efficiency of monocropping over long periods of time. Rice monoculture on its own yielded about 1/3 of the product that rice and soybeans produced over the same amount of time. This is because the soil is quite literally sick, and it is fatigued of constantly having to support the same type of plant. If you look at the graph, changing up the type of plant, not even a vast difference between the type of plant that it is, leads to a really big increase in the yield of product and is actually over time more efficient. Thank you. Lastly, I found a quick video which explains different aspects of monocropping. Basically, it's easier for farmers to grow one type of crop, and the purpose of monoculture is used to feed as many people while using the least amount of resources possible, which makes it really a popular way to farm today because we have so many people, and which means we have a decreased amount of resources. An example of monocropping gone wrong is the deadly banana disease that has recently spread. Since it affects every type of banana, it means that every banana is susceptible to getting this disease, which will eventually force us to find a new banana. And one simple way to help stop monocropping is supporting local farms because they typically have crop diversity.
How did humans affect this process? This process being the process of monocultures. In history, when the Industrial Revolution and industrialization began to spread throughout the United States, many new inventions were created, such as the plow and things like that would help speed the process of farming. And as these modern agricultural techniques began to evolve, then came the question of how can we produce more crops at a cheaper rate? And humans created GMOs, and therefore less biodiversity amongst these crops. So basically, humans affected the process of monocultures because as their desire to make crops at a faster rate and cheaper rate evolved, so did their ideas of how to achieve this goal, which is where monocultures came into play. Short-term and long-term effects of monocultures. For the short term, you would have that there would be a reduced cost to produce a larger quantity of crops. However, in the long term, this would not be the case, as it would eventually cost more money to produce these crops. Additionally, some short terms would be that there would be a synthetic chemical buildup in the soil due to the fact that farmers are having to use more synthetic chemicals to continue to produce crops, because they would, in the long term, start building up a resistance to these synthetics that allow them to continuously grow. Additionally, in the short term, there would be soil degradation, which would lead to the pollution of groundwater, which would not be beneficial for humans and in fact would be very negative. Additionally, since there are inorganic methods being used, the crops would be less desirable than organic goods. Another short term would be that there would have to be clearing of forests to make room for these areas of monocropping. And the clearing of forests would lead to the long term, which would be climate change and unstable agricultural environment, and there would just be drastic effects on natural and aquatic ecosystems, because there would be the risk of widespread crop failure, because if one disease came in to the population, it could wipe out the whole thing, and then there wouldn't be crops left, which would be where there would be an even higher cost to replenish these crops in the long run. So overall, there are a lot more downsides than there are positives in the long run when it comes to monocultures. An example of some of the short-term and long-term effects of monocultures was in 1970 during the southern corn leaf blight. This gives us a glimpse into the negative effects that monocultures can have on an ecosystem and the economy. You see, in 1968, farmers decided to plant the corn species Texas cytoplasmic male sterile corn on about 80% of U.S. cornfields. And it was going well for a little while. However, then a fungus called the Matus fungus broke out amongst the corn, and it spread like a wildfire throughout the population. Because there were no other corn species or other type of crops in the area, all the corn got wiped out very rapidly. This caused the corn growth to fall far below the expected range, as seen in the map to the right. As you can see, in the red and the orange areas, the amount of corn being produced was above 40% below the expected amount of corn that would be produced. You see, monocultures pose a great threat to the ecosystem because all it takes is one virus or fungus in this case, and the entire population of a crop could be wiped out. And this would throw off the balance of the ecosystem and is quite harmful to the economy and can cause agricultural suffrage.
Solutions: small versus large farms. Small farms. Smaller farms are typically easier to save from the harmful effects of monoculture due to their smaller areas of exposed soil. Rotating the crop grown in an area can avoid these deadly risks. Planting a different species of crop every other season will make it harder for the insects that once preyed on the previous crops to survive, allowing the new crops to thrive insect-free. Large farms. With larger farms, rotating crops is not always the easiest or most efficient way of farming. Besides rotating crops, farmers can plant a variety of crops at once to increase the genetic variety of their plants. The additional variety of crops gives an extra buffer for possible crop failures to occur without ruining the entire harvest. Obstacles. With the continuous loss of viable farmland in America, monoculture is used to produce the highest crop yield, no matter the devastation caused to the soil. Rotating crops requires heavy machinery and manpower that not all farm owners can afford. Genetic variety is not always achievable without the correct resources to produce a viable plant.
These are the links that we use to find the information on our slides. Thank you.